We are back for our patrons. First of all, thank you guys for being patrons. Oh man, you know what we need to do? We need to have. I'm going to do this for you, Alisa. At the end of this, I want you to share all of your stuff. So
Okay.
your Instagram, your Patreon, but whatever you want to let people know, and I'll make sure that people on the old episode also hear that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Great.
I meant
Yeah.
to do that for you.
Sure.
But let's jump into this book. Darren, you had something.
Yeah. My favorite, the one that stood out. Well, I love peaches, so the peach cobbler thing stood out to me. I don't, as an apologetics argument for the historicity of Scripture.
Yeah, it's better known as the peach cobbler argument.
Yeah, I
and
love that.
It's very official.
After I'm like, where is this going? But I was like, wow, this is actually a very good. This is a very good analogy because Christianity is always, that's one of the main objections to Christianity is like, what? This was written so long ago. Who even knows who wrote it? I mean, it was probably slave masters, because white people, they wrote it and they just used it to trick black people,
Right.
and and who knows if like Caesar didn't change it,
Right.
and how do we know?
Yeah.
And Christianity gets the most flack for its words. It's a historical document, and one of the only ones I know that just gets attacked. Like, oh, that's not true.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Brandon. I was just saying, like, that's how we know that sin is such a supernatural hold in our lives. We know that is a sin issue. That's not an issue with factual information, because we believe so many things without all of that proof.
Yeah.
You got to come up with a peach cobbler example to get people to understand how history works, and that just really caught my interest. I enjoyed that part.
Oh, thanks.
Real quick, you're not a part of the Monique and Darren camp of putting pineapples on pizza, are you?
Oh, okay. So I have very, very passionate opinions about pineapple on pizza.
Okay, let's hear it. I think I like where you're going with this.
I think that people who say pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, they're really just trying to oppress the pizza. And I think it's time to decenter cheeseness and put the pineapple.
Thank you guys for
back
joining
where
Black
it
and
belongs.
Blurred, and Elisa's going to go back to her life now. I'm an oppressor. Darren's not.
Yeah, I love
Darren is
Yeah.
pineapple.
Pineapple belongs on pizza. It is magical and it's wonderful, and especially if there's red onion and ham with it. So.
Oh man, she took it up a different level.
Yeah, that'll work.
Oh man,
That'll work.
Goodness gracious.
That'll work.
Oh well, I'm isolated here. All right, well let's keep it going. Let's
Jude 5. That's what that is.
So now there was something I thought that was very powerful you brought up in regards to Christians who want to do the gardening before that gardening is done, and that gardening isn't even done by the Christians. It's done by Jesus and his
The ultimate
angels.
gardener.
Yeah. You said on page 98, and to all those sickle happy Christians who want to go ahead and weed out the tares now, he says, wait, it's not our job. And if we made it our business, we'd inevitably have some wheat casualties on our hands. Just to give some people some context, you were bringing up the fact that there are so many Christians very eager to tear down Christians at the very hint of some type of heresy or misstep in their faith or something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, you believe, obviously because of your book, and we believe that there are times to call out lies.
Absolutely.
But you use the term sickle happy. What expound on what you mean by telling those types of Christians who are just so sickle happy to chop down the tares and the wheat? Why do you think it's very wise to be more discerning and disciplined in our calling out of other believers?
Yeah, this is a really good question because, of course, your ministry, my ministry, we do call out people by name.
That's right.
And that's biblical, and we have to do that. And but I think that, in my view, what I try to do is I try to give someone as long of a rope as I can before I'll do something like that. People can say something on a podcast and they might go back later and go, oh, that was so dumb what I said. And that, or they could be misconstrued or misunderstood, or they might have said something that people are blowing up into something else. Or it could be that somebody's legitimately starting to say some things that are questionable and concerning, but we're going to wait and watch, and we're going to pray for them. We're going to hope for the best and believe the best, but like, we're going to keep our eye on it and we're going to watch it. But one of the things I've observed online, and I actually observed this quite a bit when I was in the Christian music industry too. And so I don't know if it made me more merciful in this area, but I remember we would just we'd go back on the bus having really from a genuine heart wanted to minister to young girls and give them encouragement in their faith. Oh boy, our songs were not theologically perfect. I go back and listen to some of those songs. Now there were some really good ones, but I go back and I'm just like, oh boy, that was really theologically bad. But people had grace for us. Some people didn't though. You get the notes backstage and they're calling you names and they're saying these things. And it's just if you would have just maybe been nice about it and shared that with me, maybe I could have been corrected. And, I don't want to say something wrong. And so what I see online with some discernment ministries, and certainly not all, but there is this sort of target of discernment ministry where it's they just can't wait until somebody says something wrong and they can just call them out, call them a false teacher. And, I don't even mind naming people, saying, hey, what this person's saying right now is really concerning to me. I'm watching this. But to call somebody a false teacher is to say that they're actually leading people to hell. They're leading people away from the gospel. And I just think that we as Christians should be slow to do that, but also with the wheat and tares, and then in the book, I kind of make the distinction between there's wheat and tares, and then there's wolves, right? Sheep and wolves. And that's a different thing, because the Bible says wheat and tares are going to grow up in the same place. They're going to be genuine Christians and not genuine Christians that maybe believe in God in some broad sense. They like Christian culture. They know the lingo. They might even think they're saved, but they've never put faith in Jesus. And they're all going to grow up together. And it's not our job to go around inspecting all that. And, that's Jesus' job. Now, when it comes to sheep and wolves, that's different. I think that's why Jesus uses that example of a wolf. This is somebody that, what does a wolf do? A wolf is going to come and try to kill the sheep, right? That's what they're going to eat. And so the shepherd, like you mentioned, wrestling, the shepherd's going to beat that wolf back. And sometimes that, that's more necessary than going around on the lay level and trying to figure out who's really Christian, who isn't. We come together and God's going to sort it in the end. But that was the best way I tried to make sense of it. And also to kind of warn people, it's so tempting. I fell for this. I went to the progressive church, and because it was so wishy-washy and it was so theologically just vague and mushy, that we almost immediately chose a church based on what we perceived to be this strength of this pastor. Like, he was speaking truth. He was, saying it like it is. And we were attracted to that. But we didn't realize is that was a spiritually abusive atmosphere. And the anger that we should have been a clue, but because we had come from the other, to us, it felt like strength. So I have compassion on that. So the tendency can be to swing to extremes. If you've been in a progressive church, to go to a discernment ministry that's going to make you feel safe by saying all these people are false teachers, stay away from them. Whereas I think a better thing would be to hope for the best for people. If they cross the line, we have to protect the sheep. We have to call them out. But to try to give some grace, and the Bible says that love rejoices in truth, and we have to do that. But also says it hopes all things and believes all things. We want to extend that to fellow believers. But of course, if they have gone off the rails, then we have to say something. But maybe we don't want to, though. You don't want to have to do it. And I think that may be a good heart check. Is like, are you enjoying this? Like, do you want?
That's exactly.
I don't want to enjoy that.
That's exactly right. That's a great finishing point, because I think you're being gracious by calling them all discernment ministries. Some of them are just bored YouTubers. Who are like, and that's something that really bothers me with Christians, where we've adopted that media thirst to get to the story first, rather than be able to report what's true. Even if you have a YouTube channel, you're a Christian, and you're doing that, you're engaged in the culture and everything else, you care more about dropping the video and addressing this thing first more than addressing what's true.
That's
And of
good.
course, what falls into that is like being able to call people out, and that's become like a fad now. And I'm like, man,
Mm.
I can listen to a more recent pastor that I've listened to for long. I can listen to a Tim Keller sermon, and say, man, that's interesting what he just said there. Or I don't know, I might have some disagreements with what he just said there. And that
Yeah.
can even happen multiple times. It can even happen for about a year before I'm even considering, oh, he's not a Christian, he's leading people to Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
You know, and then even if I did get to that point, like you said, because of the fact that I spent so much time seeing him as a sibling, I'm on my knees for him now.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
I'm not hitting upload
Right.
first, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you said that.
It's good.
Chronological snobbery, I loved. As you brought up C.S. Lewis, says
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis referred to as chronological snobbery. He described it as an uncritical acceptance of the intellectual climate common to our own age and the assumption that whatever has gone out of date is on that account discredited. I mean, Darren addressed this in the episode earlier where the entire Bible is brought into that
Yeah.
kind of, I guess, label. What are some attacks that you've either addressed or experienced from people with this chronological snobbery?
Well, in progressive Christianity, it's sort of built upon this idea because, maybe a helpful way to think about it is if we look back at the apostles, the eyewitnesses, the people who walked with Jesus, who knew him in
Yeah.
real life, we look at those guys as having the highest authority to tell us what Christianity is. They wrote our New Testament, right? This is the inspired word of God. We believe God inspired these guys to write the New Testament scripture. So they have the authority to tell us, like, we've got it right or we've got it wrong. That's where the authority is, biblical authority. Whereas in progressive Christianity, they will look at the people who were the eyewitnesses, who walked with Jesus and knew him, as being those who would represent Christianity in its infancy. So this is like when a baby is just learning to crawl before it walks. I've heard this example many times in progressive Christianity. So we can look back at what Paul wrote and we can say, well, Paul was just at the beginning and he was just starting to figure these things out. And, he had these biases against women. That's why he wrote that. And he probably had these sexual hangups. That's why he wrote what he did about homosexuality. But we've evolved now. We've come to a higher and wiser view of God. We can look back at that and say, well, we like Paul for this and this, but he got this wrong. And we can disagree with Paul on that. So that's sort of the mentality that you'll discover in progressive Christianity. And it's really built upon this chronological snobbery. It's just the assumption that because we've lived longer, we must know more. But, as some of my friends say, like the smartest people have already all lived. Like they've already all lived. Nobody today could have gotten into Harvard, however many years ago. Nobody today could get into Harvard, the standards they had back then.
That's
so,
right. Yeah.
We think we're so smart now, but really we're not. We're just, in fact, I would argue that you could probably make it the opposite case. We're actually probably dumber than we've ever been with all the distractions and the media and all that stuff. So.
Oh yeah, man.
I can't get anywhere without GPS.
I know, right? Yeah, remember when you had to just like figure out where you were going and drive there?
Right. Oh man, what seems to be a part of that chronological snobbery, and then there was also another part of your book that I would probably say is similar to the chronological snobbery, is this question of authority or inspiration, where it's like it's not God's words or something like that. But all of it just seems to be tied to that original question of, did God say? Did God really say? And it seems to be so similar to it. It's like, man, how do you not see that this is like the path here? And I try not to think about that question too long because obviously my eyes are open because of grace. So, but so let's talk about music for a second, because you were part of a girl band. And like most apologists, they were part of bands that toured the world singing songs.
Most of them,
most apologists. I can imagine Frank Turek was lead singer somewhere. So you talked about that a little bit. What was that like I guess it started in your teen. Is a teen or was it preteen?
Well, no. Well, I was older.
Okay.
I was 25 when we started,
Oh,
but our group was geared toward those tween girls
the
that
tween.
were.
I
I
see.
see.
I got
Yeah,
you. I got you. So
yeah. I
yeah,
was
what was that
ancient
like?
compared to like that was like senior citizen to start a girl band at 25.
Yeah, how did that begin, and what was that like in a being a part of the kind of Christian? I don't know. Would you consider that CCM?
Yeah, that was CCM. Yeah,
Okay,
it was.
so yeah, what was that like?
Well, it was a very eye-opening experience. It was an interesting experience. The girls and I got together. I was living in California, and I had sent my demo to our manager, who would eventually end up being our manager, and also to who would eventually end up being the record label president.
Hmm.
Both of these guys were longtime family friends of my family because my dad was a recording artist also. And so they had already been talking about putting together a girl group, and they thought I would be a good fit for it. So I actually moved to Nashville at that point. And
Yeah.
then through some random events, we got connected with the other two, and it was just a good fit. So we started writing songs together, and that we were off to the races in that sense. As far as what it was like touring, it's a very, very strange life,
Mm.
especially when you're young and they've got you working all the time. Like I think we were kind of 25 is still pretty young. And I don't think we realized that we didn't actually have to do everything we were told. It took us a couple years to figure that out. Like I remember we had to wear these horrible outfits. I mean, we looked like we were wearing white garbage bags. And I remember the label was so excited because they hired the guy that did InSync's outfits.
Oh
And
wow.
this was
Wow.
like, oh my gosh, we got him. He's doing the outfits. And then I was like, oh, really cool. When are we going to meet him or when are we going to talk about ideas? And they're like, oh no, the outfits will be here like at the end of the week. And so I was like, oh, okay. And they
Uh-oh.
were horrible. They were just horrible. You can Google pictures of these white outfits where we have silver. Oh, it looks like there's tinfoil on them. It's terrible. And it took us about a year to realize, wait a second, actually, we were sitting backstage one night. And we're like, nobody from the record label is here. Nobody from management is here. Nobody would know if we just wore better clothes. And so we went
Huh.
shopping and we bought some clothes and it actually made the news. They're like, oh, Zoe Girl's new look. And all we did was like
Wow.
realize
Go
that we didn't have
shopping.
like they're not the boss of me anymore. So we just put on our own clothes. So I think there was in the beginning a lot of just we were overworked because we just didn't realize we could say no to things. And when you're overworked, you're young, you're really taken out of any meaningful church situation. And that's really a big one with touring musicians is that there's no accountability. If
Yeah.
you want accountability, you have to provide that for yourself and you have to really want to have it. Now, there are artists who do that and do it well. There are a few. But for the most part, you have to provide that for yourself. So it's not even real accountability unless you really submit yourself to people who have, some voice into your life. And so
Yeah.
you're young, you're overworked, you're exhausted, you're away from a church community because you're always gone on Sundays. You don't have any
Mhm.
accountability I mean, there was no pastor
Oh
who
wow.
was aware of what I was doing that day or that would check on me. That's
Yeah.
that's not their fault. It's just I moved to Nashville and
That's
went right on
life.
the
Yeah.
road.
Right.
Yeah.
So it really, I think we're seeing so much deconstruction come out of the CCM world due to a lot of those factors. You have some
Mm.
kid who was raised in church. He plays guitar. Starts playing songs in youth group, and then before you know it, he's on stage with
That's right.
the Newsboys, and
That's
then
right.
being worshipped by 100,000 people at the
That's
KTLY
right.
festival. So
Man.
Yeah.
wow, it's a recipe for disaster. So I
Yeah.
think, I just recently did a live stream with John Cooper from Skillet and with Jeremy Camp and their wives. And we went a lot deeper into some of that stuff. And it was really interesting hearing their perspective as well. Cause I think those two guys are an example of people who are doing it right, but it's a weird experience. It's a very strange world. And it burns you out really quick if you
Yeah,
don't know how
I can
to
imagine.
not make that happen.
I mean, I intend this to be a short answer, and so let me know if it's more complicated. But um, How long did it take you to realize that, oh man, this idea, I think all of us who have never experienced that, this idea of being a famous group, adored by so many, being on stage and singing, how long was it before you were like, this sucks?
Well, that's interesting because for me, it was kind of from the beginning. It was more of a sacrifice because I actually don't enjoy being public. Like I joke all the time, like I should have thought of this, like be the anonymous apologist, with like a blurred face. Because I actually don't. And I had really good training from my parents on that. I mentioned that my dad was a Christian recording artist also, and he's really ingrained in us that it's not about that. It's about glorifying the Lord. It's about the ministry. And so I was never really comfortable with that side of things. In fact, I remember we would have to do these autograph signings at the end of the concerts where you'd sit behind this table and they would bring people through like almost like cattle. They would just like herd them through. And I remember kind of protesting in the beginning saying, we shouldn't be doing this. This is like so weird. They're just like forcing these people through so quick and you can't even really have a meaningful exchange with anybody. And they told me, they said, well, if you don't do it, they think you're conceited. They think you're stuck up and that you don't care. And this is the way they want to connect with you. And so I just did it because I thought, well, I don't want people to feel like we don't care about them or something.
Right.
But it's like, I won't do that now. When I go to do speaking or something, sometimes people will set up a table and I'll just be like, I'm not going to sit behind a table. I'll stand and talk to people. And if they want me to sign something, I'm happy to do that. But I just don't do the whole herd people through in a line thing in this phase of my life because I was just so uncomfortable with it. So for me, it was kind of from the beginning and that I burned out pretty quick. I didn't, we ended amicably. We're all really good friends, the three of us. But if we're all really honest, it was because I just really didn't want to do it anymore. I really, really didn't want to do it anymore. And they were wonderful. There's not two people I would have rather had with me for those 7-8 years. But it wasn't for me.
I can imagine that. I don't think I would enjoy that. I generally don't even like being in front, to be honest with you. And I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert, but I don't like that. And then the demands, I think the demands are what would send me over the top. Like, be here at this time, do this at this time, wear white trash bags.
Wear white trash bags with tinfoil on them because they're cool. And Sync Guy did them.
Yeah. So did you guys ever meet any of the like secular artists, or were you ever on tour with other secular artists? Did the worlds collide?
Not really. There were a couple of times when we would be at a venue the day after or the day before somebody like a secular band. I remember one time Aerosmith was playing this big venue, and so they were setting up their big show and we were doing a smaller part in the same venue the night before, but all the buses were all there at the same time. And then there was a festival where we played, Journey played, and we were at on the other stage. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was like a secular band. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. We did some shows with Katy Perry before she was Katy Perry.
Yeah,
I remember
right.
that.
Wow, that's amazing.
Festivals, but yeah.
Man, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not yet, prayerfully. Not totally heartbreaking. We'll see.
Yeah. I remember talking with her one time and having a heart for her even back then,
Man. I mean, that's probably exactly what we were just finished talking about. Who knows what was she coming from? And this, obviously you can tell that, she's just like going away from what she knew, even with her first famous song. You're a worship leader as well. What do you think about this genre, worship music?
Oh boy, we're gonna have to do a whole other episode on this one. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll try to give a short answer on this. Oh, it's so hard. This is so hard to answer because I was on staff at a church for 10 years, really before COVID, doing worship, and so I have so much grace for people who are in a system that's doing things a certain way. It's really, really hard. You don't want to be the one that's like, wait, I don't want to do it this way. But now that I'm actually not on staff at a church anymore, I'm not actively leading worship. So I feel like I can speak to it a little more, maybe from the outside. The whole idea that I think modern worship has brought to the table. It's not all bad. I really don't mean to just sit here and bash it, but the whole idea that what it has turned into, essentially, with many churches, I'm not everyone, but many churches sort of buying into this idea that we have to spend 30 minutes or 40 minutes sort of getting the vibe right for the preacher, and we have to like create an atmosphere where the Holy Spirit can move, and we need to have this emotional experience with God before we sit down and listen to the word. That is modern. That is not in the Bible. That's not the biblical model. Yes, they sang songs, psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. So there's different categories of songs that were sung, but there's no indication that this was some sort of like a mystical, just experiential thing. This was about glorifying God, singing truth, unifying people together with doctrine. Singing has a way of doing that. So I question the whole method, and I've done it. I've done it for years. So I'm in there with everybody questioning it. I would just love to see churches move away from that model. I would love to see churches, kill the smoke machines. There's a reasonable amount of lighting you need for people to be able to see what's going on, because you have to amplify the sound. So it's not like, we're against every sort of that kind of thing. Yeah. But like some of it's really over the top, and it's distracting from what's happening. And I just think we need to be more thoughtful about what we're singing about. We should be ascribing worship and praise to God, not singing about how good we feel when we worship Him.
Oh, yikes! Stripes.
Party pooping. Party pooping.
Man. Wow.
Professional party pooper.
Whoa, that's going on the interwebs. That last statement.
Yeah,
man.
We were at a conference in Florida. William McDowell had a conference in at his church, and what's her name?
Trinity.
No. Stephanie Gretzinger.
Oh, Gretzinger.
She, there was like a panel of worship leaders. It was actually a worship conference. And she was there, and she literally could barely get any sentences out of me. She
wept for about 20 minutes.
She just cried the entire time. And one of the things that she said that stood out to me the most was that worship was never meant to be an industry. It's a gift. And we've turned it into this thing where we receive credit for worshiping God. We receive money that we abuse. All of it is a gift from God, and we abuse it, and we promote ourselves, and how many records can I sell, and who am I going on tour with? And
I gotta tell you, even the whole, now this is gonna get feathers ruffled, but the whole pay to sing, it just bothers me. I remember back when they started, I was in Zoe Girl, I think when they started to implement that with CCLI and all that. And I remember our publisher coming to us and saying, hey, if you write worship songs, you can go in the CCLI and churches will pay when they sing your song. And I looked at my publisher and I was like, that's wrong. Yeah. I don't want that. I don't want to get paid if a church sings. Now, if they're going to buy the album, you make money that way or something, or watch a video on YouTube, but like to sing it in their church, they have to pay. Right.
Yeah.
That bothers me. I don't think that's right. And so, that's the whole model, I think, needs to be rethought. It just really does.
Yeah. I think we're there with you. Worship. You think about the word worship. I think anybody who disagrees, just take a week and do a biblical study on worship. I think it'll be convicting. And then juxtapose that with what we go to YouTube and type in worship and then juxtapose the two. So we didn't get an opportunity for you to do this in the episode, but we'll be able to mush it in. You are an apologist. You are an author. What are some things you would like to share with the people? Your podcast, share that with them. And anything else that you want to share, here's your chance.
Cool. Well, you can go to AlisaChilders.com for all of the links to all of this, but my podcast is called Super Creative, the Alisa Childers Podcast, and my YouTube channel is Alisa Childers. And so, but I think I'm going to change it to Professional Party Pooper. I really like that. I think that's going to be my new moniker.
We need to get something made and sent to them.
We do.
Yeah.
We will.
I had this comment somebody left on YouTube that I want to make into a plaque. Like, you get these crazy comments, and this lady just put, "Keep shining, toots." And I'm like, I want to
Yeah.
put that on a plaque or a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Anyway, so AlisaChilders.com, YouTube, Alisa Childers, Instagram, Facebook, at Alisa Childers.
All right. Alisa, this has been fun, and I'm hoping this won't be the last one. We're looking
hope
forward to doing
so,
another,
yes.
especially you have another book coming out. I don't know how secretive that is, but we're looking forward when that's finished. Whenever it's finished, we want to talk with you about it. We'll
I'd love it.
reading it.
I'd
We're
love
looking
that.
forward to reading it. Thank you very much.
Oh, so fun. Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.